so this week on the podcast, we're going to be talking about habits. Are you one of those people, listeners, that have all good intentions to change a habit, maybe start a new habit, and you come out of the starting blocks all guns blazing, only to find yourself back where you started a short while later? Well, fear not. Today we're going to be talking about why it's so hard to change habits and give you some simple tools and strategies to be able to make lasting changes for yourselves. So it's habits that are repeated daily that influence our health, wealth and happiness. So it makes sense to get good at changing them.
Well, as I said before, our lives are perfectly aligned with what we do. And what we do is largely, according to the psychologists and the neuroscientists will tell us over and over again, a good 40, 50% of what we do every day is largely habitual.
Yeah.
And think about it. If it wasn't, you'd be occupying a huge amount of mind space up trying to work out what you're going to do. Everything you'd have to be thinking about, how to stand up, how to eat, how to figure out simple stuff. Yeah. So yes, we rely on our unconscious mind, which is largely habitually driven from past programming, to do that stuff for us, which is great. But the problem is when some of those habitual patterns aren't actually giving us the results we want. We have now got quite a task at hand to undo that unconscious thinking and patterns that we've got previously installed.
So if we know, that regular exercise is good for us and eating healthily and avoiding the chocolate box is healthy for us, and we know that's something that we should be doing, why is it so hard to actually do it?
Because, quite frankly, the bad habits are way more attractive. I mean, we know the idea of eating chocolate or not eating chocolate, we know it's good for us to go and exercise, but it feels more comfortable to stay in bed. So that is why they're so hard to change. Logically, and if it was just a logical thing, it would be dead easy. I mean, we'd all be doing the perfectly right thing. We'd read something in a book and go, oh, guess what? I've just learned that I need to have this type of nutrition, or I've just learned that smoking is really bad for me, or drinking too much, or I need to sleep better, or whatever it might be. It would just change instantly. I mean, our brain would go, oh, that doesn't make sense at all. But we're not logical creatures. We're emotional creatures. And our system is largely geared by these our unconscious mind. What is often described as sort of fast and slow thinking.
Yeah.
Daniel Kahneman in his book, Thinking Fast, Thinking Slow, talks about these two systems. System one is your unconscious mind. It just does things habitually. And system two is that part of us where we have to engage our prefrontal lobes, our cognitive brain, to think about something.
And that's the interesting thing. You mentioned comfort and, can be linked to safety. And our emotional brain is there to protect us, and it's constantly scanning for danger. I think something like 5 times a second. So if something feels more difficult to do, we're going to choose the path of least resistance. Which quite often, for me, is the chocolate box.
There you go. So, and you're not alone there, let me tell you. So what's this podcast about? Podcast is about sharing. Look, first of all, we're highlighting how difficult it is. We're all human beings. We're emotional creatures. And we have to work hard. We have to pay conscious attention to those things we're doing unconsciously to get that change. So we're going to share with you some simple, easy to apply strategies. That's what we're always about here, to help you tackle either creating new habits, a completely new habit, just a new habit you want to create, or it could be replacing a bad habit with a new habit.
And the good thing is that we've got really simple strategies. The challenge is that you need to be disciplined in applying them. So as long as you follow the process, you can change any habit you like.
Having the habit of applying the habits of changing habits. That is the trick here, right? So yes, that's what we're aiming to do. Of course, we're in the training industry. We've both been in the training industry for 25 years plus, and we know the Achilles heel of learning and development is always follow through.
Yeah.
People put a huge amount of effort and time, enthusiasm into getting to a program, and they learn great stuff and they enthusiastically write things down and they're super keen and they say lots of positive things on the happy sheet, best training, loved the facilitator, obviously, et cetera, et cetera. But, 4, 5, 6 weeks later, you see them again. How are you getting on? Yeah, of course. Well, yeah. I haven't had a lot of time to do that, and it's been a bit difficult, and all the excuses start to come out.
The intention was there, but the discipline in doing something was not.
So it's even corporately, it's the same. That's why organisations spend an inordinate amount of cash and money and time and effort on change programs, but don't always stick because they're not necessarily thinking about the behavioural aspect of change.
Yeah, they rationally put all the processes and systems in to change, but they don't pay attention to the emotional change that needs to happen.
How many times have, as a company installed a new CRM or a new finance system, an expense system, but, you've got to try and convert people from one way of doing something to another. And that's why a lot of those change programs don't work. The good news is when we apply certain strategies, we can get those changes to happen. And that's where our expertise lies in behavioural change. So this is a particular interest to us. But we're going to try and apply this to people who just, either you're listening to this as a leader and you want to change habits of work, that's great. But also if you're listening to this and, you're not necessarily in employment, or you're just listening to this and thinking, I really wish I could get myself more motivated to do X, whether it's exercise, eating better food, sleep, or whatever it might be, not jumping to conclusions or whatever it is, we're going to give you some ideas to put that into practice.
Yeah, and applicable to everything and anyone. So that's good. So how are habits created then in the first place? How do these habits get created?
Habits get created simply by the fact that you repeat something over and over again. And often those ways of doing certain things we've either learnt from our parents, we learn from our friends, we learn from our work environment, and we just get into the habit of doing it that way, so much so that we no longer even think about doing it.
Yeah.
I mean, just the simple act of driving to work on the same route every day, it's just, you don't have to think. Eventually you get to a point where it's unconscious.
Yeah.
And you've done it so automatically, you don't even have to think about it. And if, for instance, on a particular day, you weren't going to your usual place of work, what do you find your unconscious mind do? Is turning right when you want to be turning left. A friend of mine actually lives across the road, lived previously about 150 yards up the road. And she was saying that even after 2 or 3 months, she's still turning right at the roundabout where she used to be turning left. But so habits get formed through repetition.
Yeah, and they're like neural pathways, aren't they? And they get stronger and stronger and stronger.
It's like pressing an icon on a desktop to fire up PowerPoint. Guess what you're going to get? PowerPoint. You're going to get Excel. So if that's how they get formed in the first place, through a tiny thread. I think about it like you've got a tiny thread of cotton, and that's one neural pathway. It's one circuitry. You do it one way. You're shown how to do something. For example, tying your shoelaces. You use several goes, don't you? To what would it we taught us called? Go around the tree, down the rabbit hole, or whatever it is. Yeah. Until eventually you do this very complicated thing in seconds.
Yeah.
So it's like a tiny thread and another thread and another thread, and then it's a bit of string, and it's a thick bit of bit of string, then it's a piece of rope, then it becomes a very thick piece of rope, and then it's almost like it's like a highway, it's like a motorway.
Which is why it takes some time to unravel.
And when your brain fires up that signal, it just, I mean, it's like going down a massive big motorway or freeway. It's so easy that the path of least resistance, and we do what is easiest.
James Clear in his book refers to the cue, a craving, a response and a reward. And that is essentially what a habit is. You know, for example, you know, a cue might be that you get up in the morning. Craving might be for coffee. You have a coffee, you get the reward of feeling energized or more alert or whatever. And so that's what motivates you to repeat that pattern over and over again.
And then it just becomes automatic, doesn't it? So think about, if you're listening to this, think about the cues we have every day. You know, whether it's, you know, brushing your teeth, you might have a habit, you might have children, and therefore, you know, at a certain time in the morning, things have got to be done by a certain time to get your children off to school. They also know, although they don't quite follow the same process. And, you know, you might have, you think about your work habits. You know, what's the first thing you do when you get to work? What's the last thing you do when you finish work? What are your cues around that? What triggers you to take certain actions? And
I'm sure, you know, reflecting now, there's some cues and resulting habits that work for us and some that don't. You know, I've got this terrible habit that I need to change and want to change, which is when I go to bed, the cue, my phone is right there next to the bed. And I do the mortal sin of scrolling, checking, you know, might have missed out on something. And, you know, the craving I get is to check. I check. I get a little dopamine hit of seeing what's been going on in the world.
And so it feels good.
It feels good.
Yeah.
But it's not
good, but
it's
feels
not good. Yeah, exactly. So how do we go about changing some of those things? So should we start with how to break a bad habit?
So first thing, let's remember how they're created. Just a quick reminder. There's always a trigger. There's always a cue, which fires off a specific behaviour. That behaviour generally results in a reward. So if that's the cycle, then the first thing we need to do is we've got to remove the cue as well as we possibly can. So, for example, my wife and I, we definitely have a little bit of a sweet tooth. And we find that if we've got chocolate in the house, we have our dinner. We don't really need a dessert, really. But if we have chocolate in the fridge, the temptation is there. So guess what? Remove the temptation, remove the cue.
Yeah.
If the cue's not there, then that's a major, major part of it.
But is the cue the chocolate being in the fridge, or is the cue it's after dinner? It's like, ooh, I've had my dinner. That means now.
There is, yes, that's true. That is that. But I can't stop not having my dinner. I'm always going to have my dinner.
Yeah.
What I have to do is, other way of doing it is just thinking about replacing it with something else. But if we're just purely talking, because we can talk about that as well, how you replace a bad habit. It might be just something you want to stop.
Yeah.
First of all, let's deal with the simple strategy of trying to, like your phone.
Yeah.
Right? Easiest way to actually avoid that, as painful as it might be for you, is not to have it within arm's reach. In fact, put it somewhere else.
Have it downstairs.
Yeah.
Put it on charge downstairs.
You can actually get a device where you lock it in a little cage. Believe it or not, yes. Neil Patrica was talking about this. He was saying that you can actually get a device. You can lock it in,
and it won't let you have it.
And you have a timer on it, and then once it's in there, even if you wanted to get out, you'd literally have to smash it to pieces. And these things are like $150. So if you want to go and check your email or do some scrolling, it's going to cost you $150.
Do you know what? I need one of
those.
I need one of those for my husband, Matt, because whenever we're watching a film or anything, he is scrolling on his phone, and then 2 seconds later is asking me what's happening. So I'm going to get one of those boxes.
Like that.
Ordering on Amazon right now.
Yeah. There you go. So that's the goal, is to remove... Make. I mean, James Clear talks about it, doesn't he? Make it invisible.
Yeah.
remembering that your environment you're in, that's what provides the cue.
Yeah.
You know, if you're surrounded by all these positive cues, let's say you want to limit your coffee intake.
Yeah.
But on your commute to work, you always take a route past your favourite coffee shop.
Yeah.
That environmental cue, it's like automatic. Oh, coffee shop, yum, yum, fantastic.
And the smells when you go past.
And the smells, etc.
So your environment is not giving yourself the best chance to change the habit.
Yeah, it's why the supermarkets pump out beautiful smells of freshly baked bread, etc. Because it stimulates your environment, makes you think of bread, and you make that purchase.
They also in supermarkets used to have all the chocolates, didn't they, at the checkout, and they removed those. I mean, not because they didn't want to sell chocolate, because people were complaining that their children were wanting to grab them. And I guess last thing you might pop in is a little treat.
Well, look at those clever cues they particularly do in airports, where you've gone and made all your purchases that you want. And then there's this long queue as you go towards the tills, and what's all there? All these little tiny things that you don't actually need. Yeah. But you're passing the time of the day and you think, I need one of those. It's right in your environment. If it's in your environment, you're going to be stimulated by it, and that's why it works.
Many, many shops do that now as well. They have the longest queues and there's treats and things that you can purchase.
Think about an airport. What's the first thing you do when you go through security? You can't go straight to the gate.
No.
You've got to go through...
Yeah, it's a bit like IKEA now, isn't it?
Yeah. You've got to go through duty free. It's very clever.
And round every single different corner of duty free as well.
So the environment has a lot to do with the stimulation. So we've got to reduce that stimulation. The next thing to do is to make the old behaviour unattractive. If we can make that old behaviour as unattractive as possible.
So using your chocolate example, how do you make that unattractive? Because it just sounds good to me.
At the basis of all change and motivation, we're motivated by what we might gain or what we might lose. So what we call moving towards, yummy, very attractive, want more of that. You get stimulated by our environment, and you immediately almost start to get a little dopamine hit before you've even got the reward, because you're stimulated by it, or the desire to want to get that reward. So that's moving towards. Yeah. In business, we were talking about the benefits of buying something. Yeah. The reverse of that is thinking about what would happen if you didn't buy it. What would be the pain points of you not taking action? So we're motivated by what we might gain or we might lose. It's quite interesting, isn't it, how some people are much more motivated to do something when the pain is so great. If they suddenly think they're going to miss out, they might not do any work to get that promotion until the point someone else is about to get that promotion. They realise they might lose. Yeah. So in that same kind of vein, what we want to do is we want to make the new behaviour more attractive and the old behaviour unattractive. So obviously we talked about removing chocolate completely, so it's not there in the environment, but assuming it is there, and because you've got other people who like to eat it but you don't want to, what we have to do is find some way of amping up the consequences in advance. Because let's be honest, we always get to a point, don't we, where there's a trigger. And that trigger is often, I call it my sort of threshold weight, for example. Yeah. If eating something, you gain weight. I think everybody sort of has I'm actually doing pretty good at the moment. I feel I'm still okay, actually. I've been really good, so keep eating the wrong food. And then you reach a sort of threshold weight. You catch a glance of yourself in the mirror and you think, no.
It's time.
It's time. And the pain kicks in over the pleasure in this instance of eating the chocolate. So if you can bring that pain forward and you can amp up that image of what that, have a thought that stops what you don't want. So you're thinking, I know what I do. I might look at something, but I very quickly replace that thought with an ugly image of having, maybe too much weight, or, if it was something, I don't know, winning business and not prospecting enough, or I'd think about the consequences of either not having enough revenue or losing out to other people or missing out on an opportunity.
And you get a physical feeling when you do that, when it's something that's really important to you.
Yeah.
You get a physical feeling. Yeah. And so whether it's moving towards pleasure or moving away from pain, whichever it is, it's the why you want to change the habit, doesn't it? It gives you the intrinsic motivation to actually do something about it.
It kind of overrides your desire in that point. There's automatic desire. In the same way as you say it's a feeling, you get a positive feeling, don't you? Which it automatically makes you want to do something that's not good for you.
Yeah.
In the same way, if you can generate a displeasurable feeling, or not, is that such a word? Unpleasurable feeling, displeasure, then you're much more likely in that moment to not take action.
And is there any difference? What provides more motivation, moving towards something or moving away from something, or are they equal?
Well, for some people, they're much more motivated by actually moving towards, and some people, you can say all day long about the benefits of doing a certain action. It won't motivate them at all. They just will not move them. I've had 3 children, and I can definitely think about which one of those, well, they're not children now, but when they were, unbeknownst to them, they might be listening to this thinking, what the hell are you doing? But I knew that one of them in particular was very much motivated by moving away from.
Yeah.
There's no point talking about what they would gain if they did something, because they just weren't interested. But as soon as I said, what would happen if, my concern for you, or, what would happen if this happened or this happened, you didn't get this, or you lost out on that, suddenly it becomes a much greater motivator.
So we talked about, so in changing a bad habit, we remove or make the cue invisible. We make it as unattractive as possible, the consequence of the bad habit as unattractive as possible. Is there anything else we need to do in terms of changing a bad habit?
Well, I think on that point, it's just useful to reinforce the point that you're making the action you take unattractive, but we also need to stack in our favour the benefits of not doing it, or doing something different. So this is certainly the place. I mean, we'll get into creating new habits in a moment, but absolutely at the heart of it is there has to be a big enough reason why. If your why isn't strong enough, I'm afraid your unconscious mind is going to take over. So you've got to get on your side a strong enough reason for not doing something. It's a bit like saying somebody wants to give up smoking. Say somebody's been smoking for a very long time, which is a hard one, to crack. Logically, they know it's not good for them. They actually want to give up. Often it's just like a wish. It's like I really would like to give up, but, they don't really want to give up.
Yeah.
They don't really want to give up because the pleasure they're getting from smoking is way, way greater. And they haven't got a big enough why. I've always said this, that when the why is big enough, the how-to will take care of itself.
I think compelling events are useful in that respect. We've both a while ago run marathon. And, when you've got a compelling event like a marathon, you better be consistent in your training. Otherwise it's going to be a very painful experience. Same when I got married, there was a compelling event and you want you visualize your photographs looking a certain way.
There you go.
I ate very healthily in the 6 months.
How often does that happen with men and women?
Yeah.
Absolutely. That's another, that's the pain pleasure in action right there. You've got this picture of you, not, you're going to be the most photographed person on the day.
Yeah.
And those pictures are going to be there for a lifetime.
Yeah.
They're going to show your kids and, et cetera, and everyone's going to get copies of these pictures and so forth. So yes, the the pain pleasure thing kicks in.
Yeah.
You want the pleasure of looking great, and you do not want that bad feeling of not looking as good. We're our own worst critic.
Yeah.
To be honest, no one else gives a damn. But
No, and everyone thinks you look great anyway.
yeah,
so.
exactly. Yeah, even if they are lying. Right. Joking, of course. Right. We talked about making it unattractive, amping up the pain, etc. Could you also make it really difficult for you to do? So the example of the phone, you've got to go downstairs to get your phone now.
Yeah. So that links to the environment as well, doesn't it?
Exactly.
Create the environment or the things that are in your control in the environment. Give yourself a barrier to doing what you're trying to change.
Yeah. And, again, if you've got to get in your car, drive to the shops every time you want to borrow chocolate, you know, that is, again, it's going to make it more difficult. So just make it awkward. Take the thing out of the environment. What makes it easy. So reverse that and make it difficult.
Like, if you have a habit of sleeping in or pressing snooze, make it difficult. Move your phone or your alarm clock or whatever over the other side of the room. So you have to actually physically get out of bed. And by the time you do and go and switch it off, you're not going to go back.
You're in the game. You're up for it.
Yeah,
exactly. So that largely covers breaking a bad habit. And by the way, we're not trying to demean something. We're not trying to say this is like dead easy and it's just all we need to do is just 3 little steps and boom, a lifetime of bad habits is changed instantly. No. Remember how you got the habit in the first place? You have to do something repeatedly until it becomes unconscious. This is a question of stopping that, using this process repeatedly over and over again, being disciplined at implementing it, until eventually the desire to do that diminishes.
And I think you can give yourself little rewards, can't you, as well? For example, stopping smoking. I know my father, when he stopped smoking many moons ago, he used to put the money that he would have spent on smoking into a little pot. And I think he bought this giant, gramophone type, his first record player with the money. So, if you can see a pot of money or some other reward building up over time, then that's going to spur you to keep going as well.
Some of these habits we're talking about could be behavioural.
Yeah.
So if you've got feedback at work that you don't always listen, you finish off the ends of people's sentences, you make assumptions, you jump to conclusions, they're behavioural bad habits. Once hopefully you can't fix something, by the way, that you're unaware of.
Yeah.
So we have to assume here, if I don't know I've got the bad habit of jumping in and finishing off people's sentences, no one's pointing, I can't fix it.
So say you've had some feedback about that.
Then I think what you've got to do is you've got to make it known to people that's what you're going to change.
Go public
with it. And we'll talk about that in a minute, because just to touch on it now, we know that when we give people 360 feedback, one of the key elements to creating that change is writing to everybody and telling everybody the good stuff and the stuff they're going to improve on. So they make a public declaration. Once you've done that and you've told you've asked these close colleagues for feedback, they've told you, let's keep it simple, you don't listen, you're very short to the point, you come to draw conclusions, and they're finding that a little bit irritating. You ask for some feedback, here it is.
Yeah.
Now, if you then go and tell people that that's the feedback you've got and what you're going to do, you're going to stop doing that, you want to stop that bad habit, asking them for help in stopping that, so maybe saying to them, look, I want to stop this. It's not a desired behaviour. I'm just been unaware of it. Call me out on that.
Yeah.
Have somebody else help them interrupt that pattern.
So somebody else to hold them accountable to the declaration they have made. Yeah.
The other thing you can do is you could say, look, you've got a close colleague. You could say, look, I'm going to ask you to give me some feedback at the end of this meeting, and be kind to me by telling me if I'm doing it. You're being unkind to me if you're not telling me. So I really want you to tell me whether I have improved. Now, the fact you've made that commitment to that other person, you are much more likely, we say that commitments made in public are much more likely to be committed to than commitments made in private.
Yeah.
So it's like getting leverage on yourself.
Yeah.
You've made the commitment. You've told people you're going to do it. And then having that person hold you accountable. Or knowing one of the most powerful things that we have in our toolkit is something called a pulse survey, where they know they're going to get retested. Now, if you know you're going to get retested, guess what you do? You start working on it.
That comes back to the compelling event.
Yeah, come back to the compelling event. Most people know after 5 years of driving, they wouldn't pass their driving test. If we knew we had to retake our driving test every 5 years, guess what? We would renew ourselves to those better driving habits.
Yeah.
Because you've got to do it. You've got to be accountable to an authority. By the way, I'm not suggesting we do this because God forbid the idea of taking a driving test again.
Oh, don't.
All right. So they get the gist of it, right?
So go public.
Yeah.
And go public to hold yourself accountable.
Yeah. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. And as you say, reward yourself for those each time you produce that new behaviour. So you're reinforcing this better. Remember, the idea is that what we're trying to get to, because we're not necessarily talking about replacing a bad habit with a good habit. We're just talking about stopping a bad habit. There may be some instances where you can replace them, which is a little bit easier in a way. But really what you're trying to do here is you're trying to stop that desirable dopamine system firing up in your brain and thinking, yum, yum, great, fantastic, good feeling. I'm getting excited about it. Yeah. If you can lower that desire circuitry by doing the things we've said, you just don't get that feeling. We're not always replacing a bad habit with a good habit. So in some instances, sometimes that's actually easier in a way. Rather than watching the TV, I'm going to go to the gym. Rather than eating chocolate, I'm going to eat something more nutritious, etc., etc. Rather than having an untidy desk, I'm going to tidy it.
Yeah.
It's a different behaviour. Sometimes it's just a question of stopping the bad habit. So really what we're trying to do with these techniques is reduce that feeling of desire, that feeling you talked about earlier, that trigger. We're trying to numb that down so you just don't get it. Because for someone else, they're not even being triggered in a positive way to do that particular act. It's just not there. It used to be there, but it's no longer there.
I mean, I can totally relate to that. With when I was younger, I used to like the odd cigarette when I went out. As soon as I had the compelling event of having children, I stopped, and have never had the desire to do that again. Whereas before, I would have fought you for a packet of cigarettes when I was on a night out.
Yeah, exactly.
We've talked about how to stop habits. How about if you want to create a new habit? What's the process for that?
Well, first thing, what is it you want? What is the new habit? Mm-hmm. Is it I want to write every day? I want to plan my work the day ahead. I want to exercise. I don't want to eat nutritious food. I want to go to bed earlier.
Listen to more podcasts. Learn more. Walk in nature more.
Exactly. Right. So what is it? And then once you've written it down, I think what you really got to do, as we spoke about earlier, you've got to make sure you amp that up. What is the why? What is the big benefit to you? And write down 3 or 4 really enticing benefits.
Yeah.
And try and step into that experience and imagine how good it would feel if you had implemented that. So you're future pacing yourself, you're thinking about what it would be like if, for example, being fit, going to the gym, being able to run 5 miles at the drop of a hat, being slimmer, being more agile, being more flexible. What is the benefit?
So you identify the habit and amp up the why.
Yeah.
And then, so actually then doing it, what's the best way to apply a new habit?
I'm going to mention here a very, very good friend of mine, Colin Hiles, brilliant coach, great speaker. We worked together for many, many years. And at the start of this year, he launched a new app called the Habit Coach app. intrigued, curious, high respect for Colin. I thought I'd give it a try. And I have to say, it worked brilliantly. He has really done his homework on this and read tons and tons of books on this. And he's a very, very good designer. And he's created an amazing program. And I really recommend anybody who really wants to nail this, do his program for 30 days. I absolutely feel very positive that you will end up changing a habit. So,
and it's easier than you think using the support of a tool like that.
With the support, that's the whole idea, is the support of doing something every day is the key thing. One of the things that Colin talks about, he talks about having, when you're setting these goals, you need to have something, don't set when we set goals for doing something different or a new habit, quite often what happens is people make the massive mistake of, for example, not exercising to, right, that's it, I'm going to really go for it, I'm going to exercise like 6 times a week.
That's the classic
you're
New
lazy,
Year's resolution.
You haven't got your lazy butt out of bed for the last 8 years. Suddenly you're going to exercise 6 times a week. And maybe you'll do it, but you'll do it for about 2 weeks. You'll get really hacked off with it. You won't enjoy it. Your brain will find it so painful that it will just switch. All the dopamine, circuitry is switched off.
Yeah.
And it's just one
unachievable.
Massive, unachievable, unattractive, all the wrong things. And that's why you started off by saying, we start off doing something with lots of gusto and energy, we're back to where we started. Why? Because we make the new goal ridiculous. So Colin used this formula of ATM, which is have an audacious goal, which again is not unachievable, audacious. You have a target goal, and then you have your minimum goal.
So the minimum you are going to commit to.
You're going to commit to the target, ideally.
Yeah.
But the minimum is about making sure you at least do something.
Yeah.
So, for example, I wanted to form a new habit of stretching.
Yeah.
And I had problems with my right shoulder. I would go to the gym. I like to go to the gym. I keep that up fairly regular, but I get an injury in my shoulder. I go to the chiropractor, go click, crack, smack, crunch. And lo and behold, 2 or 3 sessions, I'm back in the game again. Back to the gym, crunch, crunch, crunch. And eventually, same injury again. Now, every time I went to the chiropractor, he would always say, Martin, here's these exercises I'd like you to do.
That's the classic, isn't it?
They're so pathetically
the physio
boring.
and the chiropractor.
Oh, this little tiny little movement, little exercise, and I don't know something that's going to happen when I'm doing it. Typical bloke.
But when you go back there, do you lie and say you did it?
Well, I possibly over-exaggerate my commitment to the exercise, the micro exercises he called them. So this was my Achilles heel. This was my thing. I wanted to start, and so what I did is rather than saying I'm going to exercise for half an hour every day, which is just not going to happen, I set my goal at 10 minutes. My target goal 10 minutes. But I had a minimum goal at something like 3 minutes. It was almost stupidly easy.
Stupid not to do it.
Yeah.
There's no excuse there.
It literally needs to be so ridiculously simple that it's very hard not to do it.
So frictionless, I think James Clear in his book talks about making it frictionless and taking as many barriers out of the way of doing it, time being one of them. That's
certainly taking the barriers out of the way, but it's the size of the goal is the important thing, Lisa, here, is that just make it so small.
Yeah.
So if in my head, for example, that I'm going to do my exercise before I go to bed, but I'm feeling really tired, if my goal is to do 10 minutes or 15 minutes, then I just can't, forget it, I won't do it today. But if I know I've only got to do 3 to at least get a tick in the box, I'm going to do it. And I did do it. So, and if you find yourself, it's like someone starting running. Don't start by going, right, I'm going to go and run, for half an hour every day when you haven't run at all. Run to the corner, run to the post box, run up the street, literally run 100 yards. Make it ridiculous. And you might feel a bit stupid doing that, but the fact is you're doing it. And once you do it, you'll get to like it.
Yeah.
And once you get to like it, you start to get that circuitry going, and you'll find it more attractive and start to do it. So Colin calls it tiny and easy.
Tiny easy actions.
Tiny easy action, yeah. Easy and fun gets done is the phrase that really sticks for me. So that is a very key thing in setting the goals. So know what the goal is, stack it, make it attractive, write it down. What would be the real benefits? So for me, I had all these things around being more mobile. I was thinking about the consequences of me not doing this in 10 years' time, arthritis kicking in, things like that, and not being able to do the things I really want to do, not being agile, not being mobile. So I started to, I wrote down a lot of things, and I kept adding to that list.
Of consequences of not doing
more
it,
the benefits.
More the benefits, yeah. So moving towards...
Some for me, some consequences, yes, definitely, some pain points, but also some, plenty of attractive things. How would it be not to feel that pain ever?
Yeah.
To be able to do more exercise, and also thinking about the sort of long-term impact as well. For example, I like to play tennis, but it's stopped me from playing tennis because I know I'm going to end up getting problems with the shoulder and my elbow as well.
We've talked about, identifying the habit and then setting the goal and amping up the consequence of not achieving that goal or moving towards that goal.
And the positives, yes.
And the positives. So what's next?
Next comes the cue. What is the cue? And we have to find a good cue, as Charles Duhigg talks about in his book, What is the cue? So for me, what I found was I needed to take the cue, and what all the experts say is if you can attach that cue to something else you already do.
Yeah.
And I played around with this a bit. I kind of had this idea that I would get up in the morning, it would be the first thing that I would do. The challenge for me is I get up the first thing in the morning and I'd have so many other things that I had to do that I felt were more important.
Yeah.
Get prepared for something, catch a plane or whatever. It just didn't work for me. It just didn't work. So I had to play around with a few things. And actually my chiropractor said it's not the best idea if you've got problems as you have.
Oh, to go straight in.
To go straight in without any, blood or oxygen, moving around the body. So I found the very best thing for me was, routine, go to bed and brush teeth. First thing I'm straight into is going for a stretch. That's what I automatically do.
By stacking it to something you're already doing, you're removing the friction or the chance of not doing it. I mean, for me, I wanted to listen to more podcasts or read more books, but listen to audiobooks. I take the dogs for a walk every morning, so I do that whilst I'm taking the dogs for a walk. It happens very easily because it's something I'm doing already.
Think for yourself, what could you attach it to? What is something you do routinely that you could stack that new behaviour to it? Now, this has certainly worked for me. I've done it so well for the last 6 months now.
Yeah.
Do I do it every single day? My goal is to do it every day.
Yeah.
I'm pretty much there every day. Pretty much. It's so automatic. It's not even something I necessarily even have to think about.
Yeah.
Brush teeth, enter bedroom. No, I'm going to do, I try and do 10 minutes if I can. And I've reaped huge rewards from it.
And it's the cumulative effect of the disciplined action that gets you the result that you want. And so do you have a way of tracking? Because I know that's, obviously the final piece of the puzzle is to actually track what you're doing on a daily basis in order to keep yourself motivated.
I found that was one of the most powerful things when I did Colin's course. He suggested that we print out this little sheet, 30 days, and literally get a highlighter pen and you mark every day that you do that habit. And of course, once you get that streak going, you'll know about this. Like we've got a Peloton as well. You're on a 4-week streak, you're on a 7-day streak. Once you start filling that out, you do not want to miss You do not want to miss a day.
I've told you before, I printed this thing out, one for myself and one for my husband, Matt, and it's got the months of the year on it. Each month is divided into the number of days, and you get to colour in each segment when you've done whatever habit is you want to change. And in my case, it was learning how to skip. That was another one I was doing. And if you go into my kitchen, proudly on the wall is a very colourful piece of paper with the months coloured in up until July when I went on holiday.
How's Matt doing?
Matt doesn't like colouring in.
He doesn't like doing the new habit either, right? So,
but competition helps too. I find, if you're trying to change something and you have somebody, an accountability partner, or someone's doing something else, then that's really powerful.
That's one of the things I did with Colin's app, is we all had accountability buddies. I found that was incredible. You create a sense of community. You're with other people. You know that, particularly if that other person has done it and you haven't. You feel like you're kind of shirking and you're letting the side down. And back to that thing about commitments made in public versus made in private. Yeah. You're much more likely to follow on those commitments made in public. So that's getting that streak going. Very, very powerful. Yeah. You're getting it feels great, by the way. You just really want to keep it going. My son, as I mentioned previously, is in gaming, game design, computer game design, and he said a really important part of the game is giving people that feeling of reward.
The dopamine hit.
The consistency. And, if you keep people in the game longer. If you make it too difficult, then you start losing them. Once you stop, it becomes easy to stop. And I'll admit, in the last 6 months, there was a patch where I kind of went off a bit. And I think it was triggered by the fact that I went on holiday. Yeah. I got out of the habit. A routine started to go.
It's very easy, isn't it, for that to happen?
So I had to get back in the game. But
reconnect with your why.
Yeah.
And start the process
and get that good
again.
feeling of doing that new habit. So once I'd got the new habit going again, it felt great. But you leave it too long. I mean, even if you miss 2 or 3 days, you are suddenly finding it really easy. You don't feel like you're letting anyone down because, I've let myself down anyway, and that feeling, that bad feeling is gone.
What advice would you give somebody that's in that position right now listening to this?
I would find somebody that they could do whatever, it doesn't have to be the same thing, but find somebody who is also wanting to change a habit. It doesn't have to be the same thing, and you keep each other accountable to it. And you ask that person, you want that person to keep you accountable, and you're going to do the same for them. They've obviously got to share the same motivation to change whatever it is, but that certainly is going to work. And keep this score sheet very visible, very visible.
Yeah, definitely on the kitchen wall works for me.
Whatever,
I walk past
on my desk,
wherever,
you're looking at somewhere where you'll see every single day to remind you. Then, of course, what you're getting now is the reward. You're getting a feeling of reward. Yeah. And that feeling of reward, as we said earlier, with the bad habits, is what keeps you doing it. So if you can get that feeling of reward, so I'm reminding myself, I can move my arm further around my back. Yes. I've got more mobility. I can move further without any pain. I can do my exercise without any pain or discomfort. Getting that circuitry going, getting that dopamine hit from the reward center of your brain is very, very, and very, addictive. Yeah. Right? It becomes addictive. People
often say that, don't they? And that's the whole thing with the streaks. Soon you find that becomes part of your unconscious and something that you automatically have to do. To recap then, the process, you identify the habit that you want to change, you set your goals, you stack the cue, so you do it when you're doing something already, stack it on top.
You literally write that out. When I go to bed,
I will.
I stretch for 10 minutes every day.
Yeah. I think Colin calls it when then, doesn't he?
When then, yeah.
When I do this, then I will do the new habit. So habit, goal, stack, track using any of the methods that we've spoken about, and then make sure that you're rewarding yourself along the way. So, I mean, just a simple 5-step process. Surely that's gonna work.
Easy to do, easy not to do.
So what's the key then? The key is the discipline in applying it, isn't it?
The desire and motivation, the why, is to me is the most important thing. You've got if you find yourself running through this and then you run out of gas, the first place I would go is what's fueling it.
Yeah.
And maybe by the way, you just are not ready. Maybe you're not ready to change. Maybe you just don't. Maybe it's just not. You're doing
not
it
strong enough.
There's something more attractive. You know, if logically it doesn't make sense, but you're still doing it, then you haven't stacked a positive enough reason to want to change. I've known people, I'm sure you've known people, and people listening will know people who are repeatedly doing things for years that they've said they want to change. They're saying they want to change. They don't really want to change. They're finding the old way of behaving still attractive. And as crazy and as horrible as this might be, people actually end up making themselves ill. I mean, chronic illness.
Yeah.
I mean, terminal illness even, rather than actually implementing a new habit.
Yeah.
Because it happens so gradually. It happens in the same way as we describe Colin's tiny, easy action. You're making tiny steps every day along a bad pathway. Tiny, easy destruction. Easy destruction, yes, exactly, yes.
Colin, you can have that one for free.
Yeah. So you're because you're doing it slowly, you don't notice it. It's like you don't wake up in the morning and find you've got an oak tree in the garden.
No.
In your front garden. Well, there's an oak tree in my front garden. Darling, hello, come and have a look out the window. We've got an oak tree in the front garden. Where did that come from? Right? It doesn't happen that way. It was a little seedling and it grew and it grew and it grew and it grew and it grew. It took a long time. All right. So yeah, it's the same thing here. Nothing happens suddenly. Things happen slowly and they happen through repetition. Knowing that, we can make very substantial changes. But you will have to turn off your fast thinking system. Yeah. As Daniel Kahneman talks about, you've got to turn off that fast thinking system and turn on your slow thinking system, which is your conscious brain. Your unconscious brain is your fast thinking system. And pay attention to that fast thinking system to change it.
And so how long would you say, how long does it take to change a habit? Or how long would you suggest people try and get a streak for?
Well, Colin did quite a bit of research on this in his app, and I think, if I remember rightly, it was something like 60 odd days, not 30 days as often. 21 days and 30 days often bandied around, but I don't. I think the scientists say it's much longer than that, and I actually think that's right.
Yeah,
I think it's get it to you're still putting conscious effort in. And that's the thing. Remember, you want this so it doesn't require any effort on your part.
Yeah,
it's automatic. You brush your teeth every day. I'll just give you another silly little example before we finish. Actually, is that when you go to the dentist, what's the one thing your dentist always says?
Do you floss?
Do you floss? Yeah. Right. So what are those little brushes called? The
Interdent.
Interdents or interdentals or something. Yeah. So he said, take these. And I take a bunch of these home and I, dutifully do a few, et cetera, et cetera. But of course, you've got different brushes for different gaps between your teeth, right? And these things, they're not built to last. And if you bend them slightly, they bend straight away. And therefore, I think it's such a pain in the ass. I can't get this thing to work. So, and then one day I was at the dentist and he got them all out and he went through every single tooth. And I went, you need this colour for this one, this colour for this one, this colour for this one. And we had 3 colours. And then what I do is I took those brushes home and I got into a habit, into a routine. And now I do it without fail.
It's weird,
without
isn't
fail.
It? With things like that and like I have a water one where you just sort of spray it. I mean,
that's a cheese
lazy
way of
option.
doing it, yeah.
But it feels weird in my mouth if I haven't done it. And I'm sure it's the same for you with the brushes. There's something missing. Something's wrong. I haven't done something.
And a trigger, you see, when I brush my teeth, then I floss. Yeah. So it's just so easy now. And for all this time, I'm thinking, why didn't I do this before? Because I didn't get a routine. I didn't make it easy. As you talked about, it wasn't frictionless. It was full of friction. It was a pain in the ass. I was throwing these things when I get in a bad temper. It was taking too long. Yeah. Wife would be going, "What are you doing? What are you doing?" "I'm just doing my teeth." "Oh, for God's sake, it's taking you forever." Right. So the whole thing was an unattractive proposition. And then the super kind of dopamine hit reward. When I went back to the hygienist,
it's like, wow.
They went, wow, Mr. Coburn, this is gold star. What have you been doing? Yeah, literally, he said this is gold star. This is incredible. What a massive difference. So, yeah. Again, wanting to keep the streak, right? I don't want to go back and go, "Oh, Mr. Coburn, what's happened to you?" Slip
it's
back.
It's funny how that external validation helps as well, doesn't it?
Yeah. So there we go.
Yeah.
Ideas for you to change that. Not completely exhaustive. Obviously, we would recommend, we'll put in the show notes the books we'd recommend.
Yeah.
We'll put a recommendation to go and take Colin's app. It's, very, very affordable, and you will get definitely a big change from it. So go and check that out.
Yeah, I can vouch
and try that out for yourself.
And as always, there's a little tool that you can download in the show notes as well, so to help you apply some of the things that we've spoken about.
Fantastic. And the next podcast?
The next podcast is it is literally my mastermind subject. It is on people pleasing.
Your chosen subject is people pleasing. You have, 2 minutes or something? I think you get every question right on this.
I think I might.
I think you might. So people pleasing, we have a master.
Not how to do it, how to not do it.
Well, I mean, you can teach people how to do it in case they want to know how to do it. Really, really good subject. Because underpinning people pleasing, there's so much else going on as well. Why are we doing it?
Yeah.
What do we get from it? What impact does it actually have on your psychology and how you feel about yourself? Because at the time it feels good, but maybe later it doesn't, etc. Delaying your own gratification, delaying your own goals.
And we'll explore the motivations, the true motivations, behind it, and how to break the cycle, importantly.
Fantastic. So until next time, as always, if you've heard something on this podcast that you found useful, practical, easy to apply, please do share it with other people. Remember, it's the giver that benefits the most from sharing. So please do share with others. And as always, please leave your comments below if you have anything that you really enjoyed or liked, and anything we can do to improve.
Absolutely.
So till next time.
Goodbye.
See you then.